I'm at it.
Well, that the years of being treated poorly and misused and abused uh, for hundreds of years can create the kind of self-hate that we internalize that causes us to devalue us in a bigger way than the system did.
That's what it is. You know, it's what was poured into us, and somehow it just managed to seep a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and then every now and then it comes out. But we have to, as a people, counteract that and totally flush it out. Yeah. And say, you know, just because they said I am doesn't mean that I am. I'm what I say I am.
Yeah. And that's our part.
Yes.
That's our part. We have a part to play. You know, now I've said this out loud a few times. I'm glad it didn't happen. But just think, if every ship full of African human beings had jumped ship and those ships were empty,
yes,
certainly they would have stopped coming to capture us, and we wouldn't have come, and we wouldn't have spent all those years going through that horror.
Right.
So that didn't happen. That wasn't a possibility. But and then you and I wouldn't be here, right?
Right.
Whoever that man or woman was that carried us would have perished.
We'd be in the motherland, you know, but in a different form, but not existing the way we are.
Yeah, yeah. Or we would have been like I'm saying, all the ships. If all the people on the ships had jumped over and nobody landed here to be enslaved, we'd have a whole different system.
That's true. And like you said, you know, scientifically, we wouldn't exist.
No. Yeah.
As we know it as Pecola and Gloria.
Exactly. Yeah. As we
African people there, you know, they would have continued. You know, they probably still would have the kingdoms and the queendoms and, you know, but and they were stripped.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
There's so the other piece though that I want to say about Africa, not only did people go there and steal human beings, capture human beings and steal them, they cut up the country like it was a pie, and all those different European countries took a chunk of the pie and owned it and owned the people and just did whatever they wanted to do for years
in Africa. So that's why there's so many different what do they call them, continents?
Well, no, it's one continent, but that's why there've been so many wars, and African countries had to fight to declare their independence. They had to literally go to war and send Europeans out.
Do they call them states? Like we call ours states.
They're countries.
Countries. Okay, yeah. There are many countries.
Now they have states within their countries, but they're countries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So all those countries were basically taken and controlled by different European countries.
Now, were they sold like like the kings sold the African people into slavery? Did they also sell the space?
No, they just turned them into subjects in their country.
So they just took them like they took remember America.
Remember the system of apartheid?
Yes, I remember.
That's what the whole continent was covered with, Europeans owning African countries, and the kings were European and the queens, the rulers were Europeans, and the people were just subjects and just suffering in the countries.
Okay, so that's what apartheid was about?
Yes.
Now, the only way that I really know of apartheid is Mandela. I guess that's probably the only reason I've heard of it, you know, because he was put into a prison and then you know, I remember apartheid, but I really didn't know the definition of it or what it really was.
It's just a system of capturing and taking over a country and all its resources and all its wealth. That's not the technical term, like if you read the definition, but that's basically what the system does.
Oh.
Yeah. So the entire country was taken over by different European countries. Those different countries went and just said, okay, from now on, y'all don't have to worry about nothing but what we allow y'all to have, and we're running things.
Wow. And then they just allowed, it was just that easy. It's them just coming in. Did they buy, how did they take it over? I mean, did they kill the people? Did they buy them?
Firearms. So that was what firearms is what made taking over this country so easy. You know, Native Americans didn't have weapons of war. They had bow and arrows because they had everything right here, right? They didn't, you know, they didn't have to hunt like Europeans did. So when they went to Africa, they had firearms that made capture easy or made takeover easy. Yes. They had firearms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember too, Africa is a nation, is a continent that is filthy rich in its own resources. There isn't a thought process saying, you know, somebody's coming to steal everything we got and us. We need to be prepared. Their systems of operation are communal. Everything is shared in some form of fashion. If you run out of resources, like I said, when a nation, a tribe would run out of resources, they would go to war to gain more resource. But as soon as the war was over, they were won.
Right, because they've captured the land and the people.
They won the war. They won the war and took over whatever the resource was that they were fighting for, but they all became one.
Wow.
So at some point, Africans didn't have that thinking that could promote a system of greed that could operate like that. So when these different greed systems arrived,
that's a shame that these people were so good at just taking everybody's stuff. You know, they had it down to a science. That's a shame.
Exactly. That's where science.
That's a shame. That is pitiful. They should be embarrassed.
That's the science of theft is what we're still
just stealing.
Theft of humans, theft of land, theft of jobs, theft of comfort in living. That's what we're all up against now.
And just took everybody's stuff from them and their family and their lineage and gave it to theirs.
And they took it and they took over the lands and placed people in these really, really damaging systems of not having nothing, destitute.
Right.
And that didn't stop until different nations, I think Uganda was the first one to actually rise up and take back their country. I think it was Uganda.
Oh, thank God. Are there any others that are close to doing what
I think now, you know, there's some forms of maybe the Europeans, you know, still doing some stuff, but a lot of countries are governed by their own people.
Okay, well, that's good. There was an uprising.
I have to research this for the next time we talk.
Okay, because we definitely will talk soon.
Wars broke out all over the country, all over the continent, and African people were declaring their independence, and Africans were pushing Europeans out and sending them back where they came from. Because South Africa was the worst place I think that's where the worst of whatever was going on went on. But that's what made the independence of South Africa so critical.
Tell me about racism 2021.
Woo!
What do you think we're getting closer to ending racism, or are we still going towards racism? Are we going away from it, or are we going towards
what
it?
Do you see? So here's what I see. Race and the racial hate that we're watching right now.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Erupting because of the changes and movement in this nation by human beings of all colors. Okay, the melting pot is for real melted. So here's the struggle right now. People of European descent who despise Black people just because they're Black, and who believe no matter what that they're superior, are way up in the air right now in arms. Right now, we don't have language today to say some of this stuff I'm getting ready to say, so I'm gonna have to use old language. But the reason that there's so much racial anguish coming from people who are white and who have those value systems of those former plantation owners is because we are coming into a reckoning with the racial hate. Now, people are saying like, you know, Donald Trump just opened up a lot of doors.
He sure did. Lord, he opened the door and they came out.
But listen, he opened doors that we were lying about anyway, right?
I didn't know it existed. I swear I didn't believe it until he opened the door and I saw it for myself.
So all these people are people who have a value system of the plantation, right? The struggle that people are having is because they would rather go to civil war than to say people of African descent are my equal.
Wow.
Their DNA is made up in this gumbo yaya of hate and their perception of superiority that is not allowing them to come to terms with the lies that have been told.
Right. They believe the lies and that they are superior because of history. They are not, they can't comprehend the truth, or they don't want to.
They don't want to. They don't want to. President Johnson said, because poor white people who were Republicans were asked, how could you support this party that it's not about you? Right. This party is about people who have money. It's not, they don't care nothing about, you're equal to Black people. And he said, if you tell a poor white Southerner anything that will allow him to believe he's better than the richest Black man, you can pick his pockets bare to the lint balls and he will never care.
You know, I hear you. And I remember them doing a survey, and the question was, how are all of these white people still believing Donald Trump? And the survey found, and they said it clearly, I'm not adding or taking away any of this. They're saying that the people, most of the white people that voted for Donald Trump were uneducated white people. That's bad.
Because educated people know different. They know, you know, I don't want to sound like one of them and say they know better. They know different. They know the truth.
Exactly.
They know human. And just think about, this is what really just takes me off my seat. African people and people of African descent had not delivered all of those children to all those plantations who could be used for all that labor, none of us would be here. Instead of saying, wow, African people really set us free.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you mean.
Really made it possible for us to soar like we do.
That's right. Because we did the
just
work.
Think if they did tell that truth.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Versus them thinking that anything to them that will make them, like President Johnson said, make them feel superior. And there was a lot of work before Trump. I want to give a shout out to South Carolina, to North Carolina, and to Virginia. There was a lot of work being done in those states around the history, the racial divide in the history, right? A lot of work being done where these conversations were going on. Trump's presence, which is the only reason he signed on to the Republican Party, is because he could be, he could live out his racially superior dreams.
Right. And one hand washed the other. They used him. Trump was the pawn. They used him to get what they wanted, and he used them to get what he wanted.
And the reason that he has been fueled, like the racial divide has taken so much fuel, is because that's how far racially hateful white people are driven. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except that they believe they are superior, and nothing will make them believe they're not.
Let me point out, Gloria, that we're not saying all white people are racist. We're talking about people that have racist tendencies.
And racism, remember, is driven by the being in a position to withhold something from another group. Yes. And so where we're talking about racism, where white people are concerned, we're talking about there are people in the world who are prejudiced in a way that they hate Black people to the point that they would rather storm the Capitol and steal an election than to say, you know what, we're coming to terms with the reality that we were educated improperly, we were educated in a really wicked way, and we want to heal and do something different.
Exactly. And couldn't they, I'm thinking it's just as simple sometimes, or even most of the times, as to stop the racist behavior, stop the discriminatory behavior, and just do a 180, and it's just as simple as just stop it, because they know the truth. They've got to, in their psyches, know the truth, even if they behave. It's like behaving poorly. We know when we're behaving poorly, but we can pull ourselves back, do a 180, and just stop it.
Yeah, but this is a way of thinking. Like I said, LBJ probably said it best. I've heard it. It's so deeply rooted. Now, the anger and rage, we know that anger is a camouflage for hurt. Okay, so hurting people can
hurt people,
right? There are white people, Southern white people, who believed so deeply that they were better than Black people that the hurt and horror to have to admit something different is bigger than they can stand.
Okay, I hear you, and I totally understand it, because then they'd have to acknowledge that their entire existence was a lie.
Yeah, Yeah. So the hurt and the horror of admitting that they are not superior and that every human being, and in terms of science, like there's only 5% of us really that's different. The 95% of every human being is pretty much the same.
What about the 5%? Tell me about the 5% that are different.
Well, the numbers may be a little off, but I mean, like our face color, our hair, our outsides are different. But once you get under that skin, the build is the same.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
The body pretty much is the same. There's some defects here and there, or something little, whatever.
Or somebody has a birth defect.
Exactly.
Like those type of people would be in that 5%. Other than that, exactly.
Yeah, and that number could vary a little, could be a little more, but the human body itself is more alike than it's not.
I agree. That's a good point. I've never thought of that. I've never heard of that, but that is so true. And that's why we say all men were created equal.
And that's what is being called into question. That's what's being challenged, because really at that time, those men meant all of them who could own other human beings and get rich off the fat of the land without doing anything. Those are the men they were talking about. Our work today is to make that document. So in that document, it's written, and these words are really important today with the racial stuff we have going on. As we become a more perfect union.
Yes.
Women couldn't vote. Black people, we know the clear fight.
They didn't want us to do anything.
Right.
It's a shame.
Black women were marching with white women in the early 20s when they didn't even have a vote. But Black women were marching with them to secure their vote. So this mindset, this male, grab and take all, and everybody else need to go home and go to bed and hush mentality, because it's really that simple, right? When you think about it, if you break it down, it's very simple. Look, I want this. I got this. Now, this can mean my wife making children with 10 other women who are enslaved, selling off those children too. That's what this meant at that time.
Wow.
And everybody else needed to just hush.
So you're saying that's what, but the Bible tells us that all men are, the Bible teaches us that all men are equal, doesn't it?
Yeah, but now, the Bible was used that was the only thing we could read. And because we were instructed to believe that the Bible said we needed to obey our master and just hush and be happy for what we got. And like Miss Seeley said, and worry about heaven later, because you'll get free when you go there. But right now, you just need to be slave, and you need to be quiet, and you need to just keep doing what your master said. Now, if those white slaveholders or holders of human beings and those persons that were causing all that hurt and harm and damage, if they'd have known that by learning to read the Bible and having churches was really where we were going to plan all of our escapes, plan all our freedom, plan all our way out of the living hell we were in. They would have never, nobody would be reading today.
I totally agree, because we learned by reading the Bible. And like you said, that was our way of communicating and planning in the churches. There were safe havens, the Underground Railroad, so to speak.
That's where we were grown men and women.
Yes.
And so that power, that experience we knew we could expand on that.
Yes, yes. And I know that in the beginning, you know, like you said, if they would have known in advance, you know, if they would have known that we were going to be able to comprehend and read it, because we read it, the Bible I'm talking about, we read it for ourselves, and we no longer had to depend on their interpretation of what the Bible was saying. We were able to read it for ourselves and gain strength through it, I might add.
They would have never invited us into the world of Christianity if they'd have known.
I totally agree. If they had known. Yeah.
Now, and there were some Christians, because, you know, Europe had already gone to Africa. And, you know, there were things going on over there. Was Catholicism over there too, even back in those days, but there wasn't this enslavement process the way that we experienced it going on. There was servitude. There were people who, you know, grew into these slave systems, but they could buy their freedoms and go on about their business.
Now, where was this?
In Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the system of servitude was in place, and that's not what happened where we were concerned.
Right, because I know it goes way back, you know, to the Roman ages and Egyptians and all of those things, you know, but, and then it trickled down to us, and I'm like, you know, I'm watching these things on TV, and then it trickles down to us. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Somebody roll it back. Cut.
Right. Wait, what happened?
Right.
What did we miss?
Exactly. Whose bright idea was this? You know, how was this allowed even? How is this real?
What, so for me, I say, what kind of a human mind can actually envision that they should control, abuse, and misuse, and even go as far as to lynch another human being?
Another person, you know, exactly, and consider them their property. Yeah. You know, yes, and then even, you know, back again to relate it to the day, to use it to suppress other people. You know, just because one group of people seems like they're not going to give you a fuss, why do you have to take advantage of them and so-called and put your foot on their neck? Yeah. You know,
what really makes you believe that your right to another human being's existence is really you're entitled to?
Exactly. And it goes back to what you were explaining, racism. It's about the race, thinking one group of people is better than another.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, Gloria. This has been wonderful. Now, we're getting towards the end. We're going to come back maybe next week if you have time, you know, but we're getting towards the end. Let's talk about some help for people that want help.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, and I'll give you a couple of questions.
Okay.
Say, for instance, a white person wants to know, and a black person, am I racist?
Yes, yes.
What do you suggest they do?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for this question, because there's a lot of hurt going on right now.
Yes.
And there's a lot of confusion going on now. There's a lot of people who know in their hearts, that believe in their hearts they're not racist. However, when they look at their lives, they have benefited just from having white skin.
Yes.
Just from not having to fight for their right to vote, just for not having to fight to stop their children from being sold, just for their right to not having to work for centuries on plantations and to go through sharecropping and Jim Crow and all that, right? Yeah. There is an inherent experience that white people are having and have had just because they are not Black. And And it is there. And so that's what we're all having to come up against today.
Right.
Black people are having to come up against the ways that we've gone along with racially motivated practices just to get along, just to get by, just to keep breathing, right? And so we're all experiencing a lot of difficulty right now with regard to all of these things that are going on. So help is something that I believe has always been available for everybody and is always going to be available for everybody. What separates those of us who get help from those of us who don't are those of us who go get some help.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good.
Simple. Those of us who want to go get some help, there are many, many groups and organizations at work right now, working with Black people, white people, Asian American people, Latinx people, because the sorrow is coming from every side. White people, there's lots of groups at work. So first and foremost, for any kind of mental health services, you're always able to access whatever county you're in. There's always going to be a body of help where mental health services are available. In Alameda County, you have some information, yes. But in Alameda County, you can call 211. It's a number, you can call that number. I think it's a nationwide number, but I know this show is, the focus is Alameda County. Yeah. So you can call 211 and you can say, I'm struggling with A, B, or C, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. And they're going to direct you to the community-based agencies or mental health support systems that could possibly be of service to you. The other thing that people don't think about a lot, but it is an extremely valuable resource, is any college campus. Mm-hmm. Every college campus has a mental health site on the campus, but it also has information about services in other areas that many of their students are working at or know about, that colleges can direct you. If you call, let's say you call the social work department at San Francisco State or the social work department at UC Berkeley. Uh-huh. And you say, look, I'm a citizen. I don't go to school and I am struggling with needing to understand more about race and the kinds of things that are going on now. They'll direct you.
That sounds good.
Yeah. There are places like with race, there are places like the local NAACP agency that's, nationwide. There are places like the National Association of Black Psychologists that have websites. You can Google them and get phone numbers. There are places like the National Association of Black Social Workers that are doing work. And you can be Black, white, Asian, you can be Latinx, you can be Mexican, from Guatemala, you can be from Japan or China, you can be from any race and pick up the phone or Google any of these agencies and be directed to a place that you can get some help from.
That sounds perfect.